Hey everyone. I'm glad you're here with me today. My name is Ethan, and this is the story of how I moved to Austin, Texas, with one suitcase, a second-hand guitar, and a head full of half-plans. I didn't run away from anything dramatic. I just wanted new light in my mornings and a little music in my nights. Back in Tulsa, I worked the early shift at a hardware store. Good people, steady hours. But my life felt like a shelf I kept dusting without ever moving anything. One Tuesday in April, after a quiet lunch in the break room, I opened my phone and typed, "Rooms for rent Austin." The screen filled with places I couldn't afford, then a few I probably could if I stopped buying fancy coffee and sold my extra speakers. A week later, I was on I-35 with a small cooler, a box of books, and my guitar case wedged beside the handbrake. When I crossed the Colorado River and saw the skyline with that sharp glass tower, I took a breath that tasted like hot asphalt, taco smoke, and something bright I couldn't name yet. My new place was a garage studio behind a pale blue bungalow in East Austin. The landlord, Mrs. Patel, wore a sun hat and called me neighbor right away. The studio had a tiny window, a loud mini-fridge, and a ceiling fan that clicked like a metronome. I inflated an air mattress, set my guitar on a chair, and ate a gas station peach on the doorstep while the evening crickets tuned themselves. That first night I heard a train in the distance, and a dog 2 yards over who had strong opinions about everything. I slept anyway. In the morning, the heat stepped into the room before I did. I made coffee with a pour-over and drank it beside the bike I found on Marketplace, a yellow single-speed with a wobble in the back wheel but a cheerful bell. I wrote a list on a sticky note. Job, bank, groceries, sunscreen. My plan was simple: get freelance gigs designing flyers, pick up part-time work somewhere with air conditioning, and say yes to anything reasonable. Around noon I biked to a food truck park. The smell of brisket hung in the air like a warm jacket. I bought a breakfast taco even though it wasn't breakfast and sat under a shade sail. The owner, a man with kind eyes and oven mitt tattoos, noticed my guitar. "You play?" he asked. "Mostly for myself," I said. "That still counts," he replied. We talked. His name was Marco. He'd moved from El Paso years ago and started with a borrowed grill. Before I left, he handed me a cup of aguas frescas and said, "Come back on Thursday. We do open mics. It's loose. It's friendly." That afternoon I found a co-working space with loud plants and soft couches. I made a profile on a local freelancing site and sent 10 proposals. My laptop ran hot, and my palms did too. But by 5 p.m. I had one response from a yoga studio that needed a poster for a summer class called Stretch and Breathe. I ate beans and rice in my studio, then walked to the corner store for a bag of ice. On the way home, a sudden warm wind pushed dust across the street and lifted the scent of cut grass. I felt like the city was exhaling and making room for me. I slept again to the click of the fan, the bark of the neighbor's dog, and the low murmur of my own hope, trying on different shapes in the dark. The next week taught me Texas heat etiquette, which is mostly move slow and respect the shade. I learned to leave my bike seat covered with a towel and to carry water like a Boy Scout. I sent the yoga poster and got paid the same day. It was a small invoice, but I took a screenshot of the payment and saved it like a charm. Mrs. Patel introduced me to her nephew, Ravi, who fixed the wobble in my wheel and invited me to a pickup soccer game at a school field off Manor Road. I played defense badly, sweated like a waterfall, and laughed when I tripped over my own shoelace. After the game we sat on the curb, passing around a bag of lime chips. A woman selling paletas pushed her cart by, bells soft as spoons, and we bought mango bars that melted quicker than our stories. Nights were my favorite. The crickets ran their endless song, and the neighbors' porch lights drew little circles on the grass. I started a ritual: sit on the step with my guitar, tuned slowly, and played the chords I knew while I watched the moon climb over the pecan tree. Sometimes I talked to myself in a low voice just to hear a person cheering me on. On Tuesday, the air mattress betrayed me. I woke at 3 a.m., on the hard floor, folded into a shallow valley of plastic. I laughed in the dark, then dragged the mattress to the wall, found the leak with dish soap, and patched it with a bike tube repair kit. It felt like fixing a tiny boat I lived on. The next day I got a text from Marco. "Open mic still on. You in?" My thumb hovered. My heart knew yes before my mouth did. "I'll come by," I wrote. I spent the afternoon practicing a simple song I wrote years ago about a long road and a bright morning. My fingers remembered the shape. My voice shook, then steadied. Just before sunset, a brief rain surprised the city, fat drops hitting hot sidewalks with that sweet hissing smell. The whole block smelled like dust turning into life. I biked to the food truck park with my guitar on my back. People were already there: a college kid with a tiny drum, a woman in a floral dress tuning a ukulele, a man reading jokes from folded paper. Marco stood on a milk crate, smiling like a lighthouse. He handed me a cold Topo Chico and said, "Just be yourself. That's what people come for." The string of lights clicked on, soft yellow dots over the picnic tables. A little boy danced by the trash can, serious about his own rhythm. I felt my nerves gather, not to stop me, but to keep me awake. When my name was called, I climbed onto the crate, took a breath, and let the first chord ring like a doorbell no one was afraid to answer. I won't pretend the crowd went silent like in the movies. Someone spilled a soda, a train rolled by, a dog barked twice at a mysterious leaf. But a table near the front leaned in, and the woman with the ukulele nodded along. My voice found a place to stand. I sang about driving east with a sunrise in my mirrors, about the way new streets teach your feet how to listen, about the feeling of holding a key that finally fits. The last chord hung for a heartbeat, and then the small kind sound of clapping rose up, not loud, but close. Marco lifted his hand like, "See?" After I stepped down, the college kid tapped his drum and said, "Nice images, man." The woman in the floral dress asked if I'd come next week. A guy from a nearby table said he needed a flyer for his cousin's lawn care business. He handed me a napkin with a phone number and a smudge of salsa on it. I slid the napkin into my pocket like treasure. On the ride home, the night felt thinner, like I could see the frame behind it. A breeze pushed me along, and the city lights blinked in a language I was starting to understand. When I reached the studio, Mrs. Patel was watering her plants by flashlight. "How was the show?" she asked, as if she'd always known I had won. "Good," I said. "Not perfect, but good." She nodded like a coach and went back to her hose. The next morning, I opened my laptop to 2 new messages: the lawn care cousin and a local coffee shop that needed a chalkboard menu designed. I biked over, drank an iced coffee that tasted like a sweet cloud, and sketched flowers and prices while the barista told me how she names the cafe plants after planets. The snake plant is Jupiter, naturally. That afternoon I rode to the river and sat on the grass. People passed by on scooters. A dad taught his daughter to throw a frisbee. A cloud tried to be a ship and almost made it. I took off my shoes and dipped my toes in the water. A turtle drifted up, looked at me like a quiet neighbor, and moved on. I thought about Tulsa. I thought about who I was there and who I was here, and how both people could shake hands without apologizing. When the sun leaned west, I headed home. I cooked pasta with a jar of sauce and a handful of cherry tomatoes that popped like little fireworks. I ate on the step while the evening turned blue. Across the fence, the loud dog lay on his back, finally at peace with the leaf. I picked up my guitar and played my song again, a little softer now, a little wider. Somewhere down the block, a kid practiced trumpet, brave and bright. I smiled and let my chords fit around his notes. It wasn't a big life yet, but it was mine, and it sounded, to my own ears, like a beginning that had chosen to stay.